Hey everyone, your board exams are right around the corner, so let's lock in one of the most important chapters in biology, heredity. We're going to do a super quick, super powerful revision to get you totally prepared.
So let's start with a really simple question. Why do you look like your parents, but, not exactly like them? You might have your dad's nose or your mom's smile, but you're still you. This whole idea is the absolute core of heredity. It's this amazing mix of things that are the same and things that are different, all passed down from one generation to the next.
All right, here's our game plan for today. First up, variation. What makes us different? Then we'll dive into Mendel's famous experiments. After that, dominant versus recessive traits, how those traits actually show up. And we'll wrap it all up with how sex is determined in humans. Let's get right into it.
Okay, first up, variation. This is really the foundation of heredity. It's all about how inheritance gives us a basic blueprint from our parents, but with all these little tweaks and changes. It's this whole idea of being alike, but also different.
So what exactly is heredity? Well, think of it as the instruction manual, the set of rules that governs how traits get passed on. We're talking about everything from your eye color to whether your earlobes are attached or free. It's the whole process of passing characteristics from parents to their kids.
And this is where things get really interesting. Where does all this variation come from? Well, in asexual reproduction, think of a bacteria just splitting in two, the kids are basically clones. The only differences come from tiny little mistakes when the DNA is copied. But with sexual reproduction, that's a whole different ballgame. The system is pretty much designed to shuffle the deck and create tons of variation. That's why we see so much diversity in the world.
So, who cracked this code? How did we figure out all these rules? For that, we have to go back in time and talk about one guy, Gregor Mendel. He was a monk who worked with, of all things, pea plants. By combining his love for science with math, he was the first person to really figure out the basic rules of how inheritance works, a total game changer.
So let's break down his biggest experiment, the monohybrid cross. He took a pure tall plant and a pure short plant and crossed them. Now you might think you'd get medium plants, right? Nope. In that first generation, the F1 generation, every single one of the offspring was tall. It was like the shortness just disappeared. But here's the twist. Mendel then took those tall F1 plants and let them self-pollinate. And guess what happened in the next generation, the F2? The short plants came back. This was huge. It proved the shortness trait was there all along. It was just hiding.
And that mind-blowing discovery that a trait could just hide for a generation and then pop back up led Mendel to one of his biggest ideas, the concept of dominant and recessive traits.
Okay, so what's a dominant trait? It's the one that always shows up, even if there's only one copy of its instruction. It's kind of the loud one in the room. In Mendel's pea plants, tallness, which we show with a big T, was dominant. It completely covered up the shortness in that first generation.
And what about the trait that was hiding? Well, that's what we call the recessive trait. It's the quiet one. Shortness, which we use a little t for, could only show up if a plant inherited two copies of that instruction, one from each parent. And that's exactly why those short plants reappeared in the second generation.
This leads us to a super important number you absolutely have to remember for your exams, the 3-to-1 ratio. When Mendel counted his F2 plants, he found that for every 3 tall plants, there was 1 short plant. That 3-to-1 ratio is the classic signature of a dominant recessive relationship. Don't forget it.
So Mendel figured out the what, the rules, but he didn't know the how. He had no idea what was physically happening inside the cells. But today, we do. So let's zoom in and see how this genetic code actually turns into a trait we can see.
Okay, so your DNA isn't just one giant messy string of code. It's organized. It's packed into these things called chromosomes. A great way to think about it is like a set of encyclopedias. Humans have 23 pairs of them, and for every single pair, you get one book from your mom and one book from your dad. So what's inside these encyclopedia volumes? The individual recipes, or what we call genes. A gene is just a specific chunk of DNA that has the instructions for making one specific thing, a protein. And it's these proteins that do all the work in your body to create your traits. By the way, these genes are what Mendel used to call factors. We just have a fancier name for them now. So here's the simple pathway from code to reality. Step 1, you have the gene, which is the DNA instruction. Step 2, your cell reads that instruction to build a protein, maybe an enzyme. And step 3, that protein does a job that results in a trait. Let's go back to the pea plants. The tall gene makes an efficient enzyme that produces lots of growth hormone, so the plant grows tall. The short gene has a slight change, so it makes a less efficient enzyme, less hormone is produced, and the plant is short. See? Gene to protein to trait. That's the central idea.
All right, let's take all these concepts and apply them to a perfect and really important real-world example: sex determination in humans. This is a classic case of how chromosomal inheritance works.
So remember those 23 pairs of chromosomes? Well, for 22 of them, the pairs are matching, but that 23rd pair is special. It determines our biological sex. In females, you get a perfect pair, 2 X chromosomes, so XX. But in males, it's a mismatched pair, 1 X chromosome and 1 little Y chromosome, so XY.
So how does this play out? It's actually pretty straightforward. Since a mother is XX, every egg she produces will always carry an X chromosome, no other option. The father, though, is XY, so when he produces sperm, about half will carry an X and the other half will carry a Y. So you see, it all comes down to which sperm reaches the egg first. If it's an X sperm, you get XX, a girl. If it's a Y sperm, you get XY, a boy. It's always a 50-50 chance.
Okay, let's boil this all down to the key takeaways for your exam. Number 1, heredity explains both similarity and variation. Number 2, Mendel's experiments gave us dominant and recessive traits. Number 3, remember that classic 3-to-1 ratio in the F2 generation. 4, genes on chromosomes code for proteins, and those proteins express the traits. And finally, number 5, in humans, the father's chromosome, the X or the Y, is what determines the child's sex. Got it? Good.
And I'll leave you with this one last thing to think about. We just established that for humans, it's all in the chromosomes, right? But get this, for some animals, like turtles and crocodiles, it's the temperature of the nest that decides if the babies are male or female. So what does that tell us? It shows that it's not always just about the genes. The environment can play a huge role too. Pretty cool, huh? There's always more to discover. All right, that's it for now. Good luck with your revision.